Hello, welcome to my presentation on the aggressive ignition of pasta using hydrogen peroxide and yeast. And so the purpose of this experiment is to demonstrate a fascinating chemical reaction that results in the aggressive ignition of pasta using hydrogen peroxide and yeast. So today I will be using a mason jar, hydrogen peroxide, active dry yeast, a pasta noodle, and a lighter. And let's see here. So these are just a few pictures. So I have the active dry yeast, the teaspoon that I'll be using, or tablespoon, or teaspoon, sorry, and the hydrogen peroxide. And so I will show you a video of the experiment, and also I'll explain to you the procedure. So I'll be pouring a small amount of hydrogen peroxide into the mason jar, filling it about 1/4 full, and then I will add a teaspoon of active dry yeast into the jar, and then insert the noodle into the jar so that it stands upright with one end submerged in the liquid. Alrighty. And then now I will be playing a video of the experiment. Alright, so here we have our materials: the mason jar, hydrogen peroxide, active dry yeast, and the pasta. And so I will be using these materials in order to do the experiment. So I'm not going to be using the outer rim of the lid because then it would create too much pressure inside of the mason jar, and so I'll just be using the lid here. And I placed a hole in it where I fit the little noodle, and I will eventually place it on there. So now I'm going to pour the hydrogen peroxide into the mason jar, and I'll fill it about 1/4 full. And then I will be putting the active dry yeast into the jar. And then I'll be putting the lid on the mason jar with the pasta noodle in there. And so I'm going to try to hold this lid down to act as a seal. And then you'll see that we'll start seeing some bubbles, which indicates the release of oxygen gas. And then I will light the mason jar, or light the noodle with my lighter. And it should light due to the presence of oxygen. So the bubbles that had formed was due to the yeast starting to decompose the hydrogen peroxide. That was the immediate reaction. And now the noodle will start to catch on fire. And this noodle is acting as the fuel for this fire. All right, so as I said, so the noodle acts, well, let's see, when the yeast is added to the hydrogen peroxide, it acts as a catalyst, breaking down the hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen gas. And so here's this chemical equation here. So hydrogen peroxide, when it's broken down, it will release water and oxygen gas. And so the rapid release of oxygen gas creates an environment rich in oxygen, which is highly reactive, especially when lit with the lighter. And so the combustion of pasta, the noodle, being a carbohydrate, serves as the fuel. In the presence of abundant oxygen, it ignites aggressively. All right. And also, to further explain, so the small size and shape of the noodle also contributes to its quick ignition, as it allows for a greater surface area to react with the oxygen. So, when I was conducting this experiment, I did have some issues getting the noodle to catch on fire, and this could be due to incorrect ratios. Maybe I didn't use enough active dry yeast, or too much hydrogen peroxide. Also, I did shoot this a couple of times, and the noodle did not light right away, and that could be due to the oxygen gas being released from the mason jar too quickly, and I wasn't able to get a amount of pressure in there to form the oxygen gas to be there to react and start the fire. And the hydrogen peroxide that I had is old. It's something that we've had in our house, and so it has been used, and that could also play a role in that there's a chance it's expired, but it still was able to light the noodle. But thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great holiday.